Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I've got my follow-up review for Simba today. Full disclosure, myself and a few others have had access to a 5-star level 50 Simba for testing purposes so we can provide you with this content. This was given to us by Kabam. It's just a temporary thing where it comes into your account for a couple of days to allow us to test and put together videos like this, and then it gets taken away again. But before we get into it, if you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying the content. I'd also really appreciate a like. It helps me with the YouTube algorithm. And as ever, comment with your thoughts down below, what you agree with, what you perhaps don't agree with. Let me know your thoughts about the video. Let's get into it. And here we are, guys. Here's your Super Saiyan Simba. Let's jump straight into his kit. Let's start by looking at his traits. So Simba is a goofball. Goofballs have been used a lot recently. There's the Baloo event, and I think they've been used in dungeons as well. So that's seemingly a very useful trait that's starting to get used a lot more. And then we'll look at his towers. He can be used in 2 towers. This makes him really valuable in my opinion. He can be used in both royalty and leader. Now royalty didn't have a tank. Simba now slots in perfectly. I'll show some footage today of me beating towers with Simba. In fact, I'll be showing you Simba in towers, story, supply runs, and events. Okay, so that's his traits. Moving on to his abilities. Right, Simba's core ability. Simba is immune to stun. This, in my opinion, is an extremely valuable immunity. You've got characters like Genie who stun for 4 seconds, and the AI is just so annoying. Simba obviously can just bypass that, which I think is great. He also resists 30% basic and heavy attack damage from melee and tank enemies. You're going to see this sort of synergizes a little bit with his talents, but honestly it makes him situationally one of the best tanks in the game because he's just so good against melee and tank enemies. Right, moving on to his special ability. Now Simba's special ability is fantastic. He deals 400% damage to enemies in front of him and then gains indestructible and lures enemies for 5 seconds. This is so valuable in game. It makes him a fantastic AI tank, and most of the time that I use this special ability, I just leave the AI to do its work. The thing is, when Simba's lure is active, he gains 15% armor when he's hit by a heavy attack or special abilities from melee and tank enemies. So you're going to see in footage that once he uses the special ability, he's just going to get swarmed by all the enemies. And if he gets swarmed by melees and tanks, he's going to take a battering. They're going to use their specials. They're going to use their heavy attacks on him, and he's going to build up armor whilst not taking any damage. This synergizes really well with his talents, which we will get to, but one of his talents effectively enables the rest of your team to get armor gain when he gets hit. So this is what really makes him shine as a character. That lure lasting for 5 seconds and giving him indestructible is genuinely better to leave him alone when he's got this ability active, because if you're controlling him, you're most likely to just naturally dodge out of the way. You really need him to take hits. You really need him to take a battering, and the AI is pretty dumb for the most part. So he'll gain lots of armor when you're not in control of him, and that's going to help your team. The other thing is when Simba's lure is active, he's immune to knockback and except from special abilities. And when his lure expires, Simba knocks back enemies in a circle around him. Again, this is another great aspect of his ability. I will say that the fact that he doesn't knock back initially does let him down a little bit, because it means you can't interrupt specials like you can do with other tanks. You know, characters like Maleficent, Ian, those getting their specials off, which are super annoying, you can't really interrupt them with Simba. And it means his special ability isn't massively OP. I guess this is a good thing. You know, the fact he's got a big cooldown of 15 seconds, it makes sense for him to have a bigger cooldown because this ability is so strong. Not having that initial knockback does mean that you have to be a bit more careful around characters that you really do need to interrupt. I'll give you an example of this. The hardest mission in the game, excluding, you know, dungeons on master, I'd say is the Jafar mission on 710. Because Simba can't knock back Jafar straight away, it means you can't rely on him in order to knock back and interrupt his special, which makes it extremely difficult to beat him with someone like Simba. Simba does definitely have his weaknesses, and we'll discuss that. Then lastly, Simba's signature ability will deal 200% damage to enemies not backed by his special ability, which is okay. And then when he's hit by a melee or a tank, enemy while his lure is active, he gains an attack buff which lasts for 6 seconds. Honestly, Simba doesn't really hit that hard, so yes, it's useful to get these attack buffs, but you don't really notice it. So as a signature ability, I suggest not investing in it too much. There are definitely characters with better signature abilities here than Simba, so those signets, preserve them. Right, now moving on to Simba's talents. Okay, so his first talent and his second talent just grant defense and attack. Nothing to sing and dance about here, just avoid those ones, guys. Move straight on to his advanced abilities and his elite abilities once you unlock them. Now, there are 2 abilities you must equip when using Simba. Number 1 is solar shielding. So Simba gains 15% armor at the start of encounter. This kind of goes a long way for making him a good AI controlled tank. The AI isn't that great at the beginning of battle. The AI isn't that great in general. So the fact that he gives himself armor at the start means that you don't necessarily need to control him. When you are trying to punch up big levels, you might need to take control, but this ability goes a long way in allowing him to just give him that little bit more survivability, so you don't need to take control. Now, this second part of his ability also is very, very useful. The amount of armor Simba gains from his special ability is increased by an additional 9%. Simba, when he gets attacked, he's going to gain lots of armor. This just means his armor gain is even more, and it makes him a better tank in general. So, must equip this one, guys. The next talent you must equip is this elite one. So each time Simba is hit by an attack from a melee or a tank enemy whilst his lure is active, other allies gain 8% armor. Now, this is what really makes him shine as a tank. When I look at tanks, I expect them to either give themselves armor gain or give allies armor gain. Now, when they can do both, it really, really takes them to another level. Now, this elite talent situationally makes him the best tank in the game. If you are fighting a lot of melee or tank enemies, Simba is genuinely the perfect tank for you. You've got missions in the game where there are so many elementals, they just keep spawning. Simba is far and away the best tank against these elementals. Just put that lure, he'll get attacked so many times and he'll just mass produce armor for your whole team and make it pretty much impossible for you to lose from that point. So Simba is easily the best tank in the game when you're fighting these multiple enemy battles like you do with these elementals. 100% equip this one. Now, the third talent that you want to equip is quite debatable. You've got Radiant Diversion, which effectively allows your allies to do more damage on their basic and heavy attacks to targets that are attacking Simba. This talent is actually great if you've got a high damage dealer. So for example, sitting back and just holding the trigger with a Zerg, he's going to do more damage on those attacking Simba. Or if you're in the thick of it with the melee like Ariel, Minnie or Snow White, then you're going to really see the benefits from this talent. And the next one is Blinding Lights. So when Simba's lure expires, melee and tank enemies adjacent to Simba become dizzy for 8 seconds if they are not already dizzy. Now, dizzy just basically affects a target's accuracy, decreasing the chances of them landing a hit. Now, this actually going for 8 seconds, it can be pretty useful. Again, if you're fighting masses and masses of enemies, it's noticeable, but at the same time, I don't think it's a standout talent. It's just a very good talent. I guess you can switch between Blinding Lights and Radiant Diversion, depending on the battle in front of you. And there we go, guys. So that's my review of his abilities and talents. I'll quickly just show you some footage now of Simba in action in some of these massive punch-up battles. Now, as I said to you before, I think Simba is situationally the best tank in the game. Now, what I mean by that is in certain battles and against certain enemies, there's going to be no better tank. Because say you're coming up against a lot of enemies which are melee and tanks, he's going to be able to gain so much armor and give it out to the team. It's ridiculous. Like, there's just no tank that comes close to being that good at dealing with tank and melee enemies. Also against those elementals, Simba is just far and away the best tank. Because once you get that lure active, that armor gain is just insane. So against those melee and tank enemies, Simba is S tier. He's easily the best tank. However, And this is a big however. When you are fighting ranged units, Simba struggles. I'm going to be real with you. I've fought a lot of battles in my testing against ranged because his kit is so built to counter and to take damage from melee and tanks. There's nothing in there about ranged. Now when you fight ranged, and what I did here to test was I used Simba in supply runs in the final mission for ranged, and I couldn't keep him alive. The problem is he doesn't get any armor from ranged and he just gets destroyed. It's quite sad really. He just gets absolutely wrecked, and it only takes 1 or 2 hits from Goofy and Scrooge to just basically kill him. In the same way, he's gonna struggle against Jafar. I mentioned already that he's not the best for fighting Jafar. I lost heaps of battles in my testing of 710 expert with Jafar. And then lastly, Tower level 30. When you go through to fight Hades, Hades will spawn Maleficent and an archer minion. This fight's actually quite difficult. You need to go in with quite a bit of armor, which is doable because you're going to fight Hercules on the first level. There's 2 Hercules that can easily give you enough time to gain armor. But I will say it gets a little bit dicey in that fight. You can lose a lot of health and you are relying on that previous round of armor to get you through to the end. So overall, what do I think of Simba? Honestly, in my opinion, he's S tier. And there are only 2 other tanks in the game that I think are arguably better than him or at his level. And those are Wall-E and Mr. Incredible. Now in my last Wall-E review video, I sort of said S tier, maybe A. I've done so much more play testing with Wall-E now to confirm that he is comfortably S tier, and he makes so many units better himself. The likes of Minnie, Scrooge, Mike Wazowski, Baloo, all these characters that you wouldn't expect, just makes them so much better. But back to Simba, we can talk about some team compositions for him. Now I just ran Mickey and Ariel with Simba. Simba does actually work quite well with ranged. I hate to admit it, I'm not the biggest fan of range personally, but I did a bit of testing with Zerg. Now when I play with Zerg, I often find that it's difficult to just find a space to just stand and hold the trigger. Now because of Simba's lure, he can take away those enemies. And also this is where that attack talent comes into play. If you equip that attack talent on Simba, Zerg is just going to do so much more damage to the characters that are attacking Simba. So it is quite a good strategy just to have Simba run off and lure and you stand back with Zerg. I do prefer melee for a reason, because there's only so much beating that he can take. So I personally prefer melee, and the other talent of his Dizzy is really quite good with melee, so that's what I prefer to use. So you do have a lot of options. He does have pretty good synergies with melee and ranged in general. You just need to be a bit conscious of him if you are going with ranged, that you don't have that melee to support him in the thick of battle. If we quickly touch on towers, so in the leader tower, I took in Mickey, Mr. Incredible and Simba. He'll synergize a lot with any of these. You know, we've got some ranged in here, Gaston and Buzz, I imagine he can do quite well with. Snow White as well, she will also do quite well. And Hero and Scrooge, no one can go wrong with those. So as for royalty, I used Tiana, Ariel and Simba. I'm sure you can use Scar or, you know, Belle or Snow White, Anna, any of these guys as well. And he will get you through with minimal issues, to be honest. He's a fantastic tank and he's someone that I'm going to try to get to 5-star. And if you are thinking about investing in him, it wouldn't be a bad decision if you did. I think this guy pretty much can synergize with anyone. I just will say this, your use out of him will really depend on the opponents you're fighting. So as I said, elementals, lots of enemies, lots of melees, lots of tanks, use him. If you're just against ranged, don't bother. He's not going to be good enough as a tank to fight those guys. He also struggles to disrupt specials, so against people like Maleficent or Ian, if you're controlling him, it's just quite frustrating. You're relying on the other characters that you're using. So my verdict on Simba is he's S tier, but I do think that maybe Mr. Incredible and Wall-E are just that slightly bit better than him in terms of their well-roundedness. However, as I said, situationally, he is the best tank in the game. And also, because of his lure, I think he's the best AI controlled tank, because the AI can be stupid and let him build his armor. And he's better than any of the other tanks below those two. So that's my verdict for Simba today, guys. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching.